Okay. We're going to start with this wonderful poster. Now, there was a bit of talk in the national press about 2 weeks ago to do with this poster because somebody reckoned they had the copyright on it. But actually, it started off as a wartime poster. I think it was produced in 1939, and then they didn't use it. I think it's a really nice poster, and I like it. But it's very interesting as to why it wasn't used at the time. And the reason was that they thought that it wasn't necessary. It wasn't actually necessary to tell the British people to keep calm and carry on, and they may regard it as a bit of an insult because we're British and that's what we do. And I thought, what an amazing change between the view of what the British people were like in 1939 and the image that many are trying to portray of us today. So we decided we'd bring Keep Calm and Carry On out of the closet, and we intend to use it, and we used it on the edition of the last UK column that came out. And it's a funny old thing, but since we did it, we're starting to see it in other places. And I would very much like the Lawful Rebellion movement to actually claim ownership of this. Because if we keep calm and carry on and do the right things, we are going to win. Okay, now, what I want to do is I'm just going to take you through the journey of what's happening in the country. Some of it, I'm going to say, is a duplicate of what Roger's done this morning, and I think his introduction was phenomenal, so well done, Roger. If any of you think that we've had sessions of working together on this talk, you're absolutely wrong, because we work under organised chaos, and that means that at approximately 11 o'clock last night, well, that's wrong, until Roger arrived here this morning, I had no idea what his presentation was going to be. So you can achieve a lot by being disorganised, but be disorganised in an organised way. And that is politically correct to do so. So we know if we look around, something's wrong in the country. It's easy, and it's becoming easier and easier. But many of the other people who don't fully understand what's happening are getting pulled into a trap because they find this terribly sad and depressing. And that drags people into a bad space. And what's actually happening at the moment is that we are being attacked. But what's happening is that it's our minds that's being attacked. The aim is to make us depressed and anxious and violent and oversexed. That is the plan. It's a real plan. And the effect is the decay that we start to see around us. And it's fascinating because Roger and I are looking at the same subjects, and we've seen some of these scenes, and I'm sure some of you have seen it if you're out late at night in the main city areas where all the clubs are. It was pretty bad 15, 20 years ago, but now you're seeing some sites that you just look at it and it's wrong. Churches, well, it isn't the churches that's under attack, it's faith. If you've got any form of understanding that there's more to life than just man, you're a big worry to the powers that be, because they want to stamp out any true faith. Christianity is one of the ones at the top of the list because it's still very much linked with this country. But if you look around what's happening with the established churches, they have been politicized. And they are not talking right and wrong. They are talking a soft, cuddly, politically correct version of it. This is very dangerous. And we see with the falling away of the churches that the church infrastructure itself is starting to crumble. Do I personally believe that we have Satanists in amongst the Christian church in UK? Absolutely. Absolutely. So this was quite an emotive slide that I found. It's one of the old inner city schools, and of course these are all now being pulled down. They can't be refurbished, they have to be destroyed. But these were the schools that put education next to the communities and in the communities. And they're being pulled down and replaced with ever bigger schools, which are ever more anonymous for the pupils inside. And one of the things I was shocked to discover as my children went through education was, instead of getting a proper report written on them, it was a pro forma where statements were ticked. And that meant that the staff clearly didn't know my children. They could only go by a rough outline. That's not a criticism of teaching staff, because this is government agenda which has been pushed on them. And we know that the massive academies that are coming in are all based on big corporations. And if we dig behind the corporations, we are seeing more and more connections with very dangerous corporate, global corporations, particularly those connected with the defence industries. Nice. Manufacturing dropping away. This is a sad picture of one of the big old factories. I think it was a shoe factory originally. But jobs, which are the things that keep people motivated, give them the income so that they can look after their families, we can look after our families, and hopefully have fun and enjoy life as well. The work is being taken away from all of us, and there's a lot more to go. I put this one in for Roger because one of the things that we've noticed, because we're mariners, is that the port infrastructure around the country has been taken away. If you go to somewhere like Liverpool, all of the major docks infilled and covered with executive homes. And this picture has been carried on around Britain, so that we're left with a few ports, very few, we're talking about 4, and they are controlled by foreign corporations. We are an island race. Our food comes in by sea, and the ports that are the gateway to that food supply are now owned by foreign people. And maybe they're not bad people, but maybe their governments are. So this is very dangerous. Hospitals, the same thing. The old hospitals, which were built where the medical provision was needed, these are all being pulled down. And they're replaced by huge hospitals. And that means that people have got trouble travelling to those hospitals because the public transport can never really provide the service. And if you go to most of the bigger hospitals these days, the moment you go into the car park, you're paying more money on top of the taxes you've already paid to pay for that health provision in the first place. It's fraud. And here's a fraudster, because this is the problem. While we see the decay and we can see that the country is being slowly but surely brought to its knees, people like Clegg go around the background doing the sweet talk, playing up to the Brussels Broadcasting Company in order to make it look as though they are doing the right thing. Do I think that Mr. Clegg gives a fig for anybody in this country, apart from his fellow elite? Absolutely not. He doesn't even know whether he's British. He doesn't know whether he's English, because if you delve into his background, there's so many mixtures, and his education and initial youth was in Europe. He's an internationalist. And his mind, I believe, is on international matters. It's not on providing health care for the old lady down the street. The man is a hypocrite. Not going to dwell on this because Roger's done it so well, but we know that we can pick any area and something's gone wrong with it. I don't smoke, but you can't even find a pub to have a cigarette in. We're seeing pubs shut, thousands of them, and that's to stop us talking to each other and socialising. Yeah? So the list goes right the way across the country, and we know it. And of course, Roger quite rightly said, if we're really going to understand it, we've got to understand that they're trying to move us towards a one world government. And in other talks that I've done, I've shown slides which talk about the all-parliamentary group it's basically one world government, but it's an all-parliamentary group for world government which exists in Westminster. So this is not fiction. This is not conspiracy theory, because the documents are there showing what these people are doing. And just under the header there, we've got the Bilderbergers. Now, it's very interesting because all of a sudden people are starting to talk about the Bilderbergers and ask who they are. They've been going since the Second World War, but having very discreet annual meetings where major global leaders, in inverted commas, and the owners of the big corporations are deciding what our future should be. And so our problem is at the bottom. We are part of the European problem. We're not to be a nation state. We're to be forced into a bloc. There are 3 power blocks: America's Europe, which is to include Africa and Russia, and then the Pacific areas. And that is the plan. And if you go and have a look at the Trilateral Commission, you can read their documents where they're talking about it. So there's no fiction, there's no theory, it's fact. And we say to the people who hopefully will be watching this as a video, go and check it yourselves. We've been warned, and we've been warned by many people long ago. So Thomas Jefferson here started to tell the real truth when he said that basically, unless governments are frightened of the people, you're going to live in a dictatorship. If I had given this talk 6 months ago, I would have said that the government was not frightened of the people. But I'm going to say, standing on the stage today, when I look at what's happening globally, when I look at what's happening in this country, and I watch the politicians in this country carefully, I see the start of fear. They are becoming fearful of us because they know we're waking up. And we've got to keep this little psychological attack going. Personally, I would like David Cameron, after he's woken up in the morning, and the first thing I'm told happens is he gets his ego stroked by Sam. I'll leave you to think about that. And then he gets out of bed. And originally, he didn't care about ordinary people because he doesn't regard us as being important. Now, I think he's starting to sweat. And what we've got to do is get him to wake up every morning with the thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to be out there and they are going to be coming after me. We've got to make this man feel this. Otherwise, Thomas Jefferson's tyranny that he's predicting is going to happen. Now, why has it gone wrong? This is the key bit. And 5-6 years ago, I still had people laughing and sniggering at some of the things I said. I still had some of the people in the smaller parties laughing and sniggering. I don't anymore. I can tell you that recently I've had some very interesting contact by people in, I'm just going to say some of the smaller parties, but they've come to me and they've said we're looking at it as well and we can see it. And they're talking about common purpose and they understand it. I'm not going to get too heavy on the political side, but something we have to understand if we're to argue properly. Sorry, my hands are getting a bit sore there. If we're to argue the case properly with other people who need to learn, is that we have to understand this is not communism. It's not raw Marxism. It's not fascism. It's a combination. This is vital to understand this. If you want to get close to it, go and look at Gramsci and have a look at Saul Alinsky, who's one of the students of Gramsci, who is pushing this agenda through the world government system. It's a synthesis, it's a joining together of raw communism and fascism and corporate interests. Yeah? It's dangerous, it's very dangerous, because while people think in terms of left wing and right wing, they're not looking for the real beast, which is in the middle of the two. I think I've got a break while there's a change of tapes. 2 seconds. Has anybody been following the events, just because there's a camera down here, it reminded me, has anybody been following the events with Olympus? Okay, very, very interesting this thing going on where Olympus were going to take over a company. Well, they did. It cost them a huge amount of money, into the billions, but all of a sudden a very large sum of money disappeared, and we're talking the hundreds of millions. And their chief executive, who I'm proud to say is British, decided he would speak out. And he's now speaking out about a massive, obviously global-based corporate fraud. He's gone to the Metropolitan Police, the Serious Fraud Office, to try and get something done about it. He's asked for protection, and I can understand why. That man needs our support. So if you haven't read up on it, get your noses into the paper or onto the internet and look up Olympus and see what's going on. And if you feel like emailing that man or sending in letters of support to newspapers, I think you should, because we need whistleblowers. These are very, very vital people. Are you going, Bill? Okay. Okay, I'll come on to that at the end if you remind me. Now, this is the problem. Absolute betrayal by our politicians. Absolute betrayal. They talk about votes in Parliament. Cameron is talking about there being a vote in Parliament on the issue of an EU referendum. It is a lie. It is a smokescreen. Because when the serious votes have come up, Parliament is empty. And these are the people that have really started it in this country. Margaret Thatcher, well, maybe she did some good things. Certainly she was removed as Prime Minister when she challenged the Bilderberg Group. Ted Heath, many people believe this man was a pervert. He was a pervert and a traitor. Certainly from the documentary evidence about a traitor, I agree with it. But we get used to believing that the people in power are good, clean people. They're not. It's an international criminal elite, and we need to start talking about it. Here's Mr. Hurd. Now, I'm told that Mr. Hurd was at a meeting. I can't remember the location, but Albert Burgess is in the room, knows where it was. And Albert mentioned treason, and he went a bit pale round the gills. So these people know we're starting to come for them. Here's Albert, and I wanted to mention him because he has consistently stuck at treason, exposing treason. And what Albert said to me in the early days, when we take the treason reports into police stations, first of all, they will laugh and they will block them. But as we keep doing it, so they will begin to pass it up the chain. And he is absolutely right, because that is what has started to happen. So I'm going to give a big thank you not only to Albert, but also to the British police, because although they get a lot of very bad press, we have now got an increasing number of police officers giving us information. They want to give us information, they're desperate to do it, and they want to get the truth out about what is stopping the treason moving up through the system. So shortly, I believe we're going to be able to name senior police officers as traitors, and they need to be named. But can I ask you, I'm going to say gently, you're a rotten lot, because I wanted some applause, but I wanted you to give a round of applause for the British police who've got the courage to stand up and be counted. We don't do theory. Albert doesn't do theory. Dave Barnes, who did all of the key research on documents showing treason, doesn't do theory. So these are a couple of documents where people were discussing what they could actually do in order to get us into the European Union by deceit. And the first one concerns Norman Reddaway. And this is what was discussed in the letter. Now, these are letters going around parliamentary circles. So it's fairly clear from that. I'm having difficulty reading it off my laptop. But the discreet promotion of letters to the press through confidential brokers should now sharply increase. This was the hidden campaign in order to change public perception to get us into the EU. They were using public money. This was treason. And on the other side, another letter, and I really can't read that, so perhaps you can. There's no problem at all with BBC TV Scotland. All those involved in news and current affairs are pro-marketeers, and we can depend upon them to press for as much time as possible. So here is absolute proof that the BBC, which is paid for by us, the taxpayers, was working to commit treason. And this is one of a series of letters. If you go to Albert's website, which if I just come back somewhere, that's Albert's website, you can see more documents. And there's also a disc at the back which you can buy with those documents on. Sorry, I just have to go through this again. Sorry. Here he is. Now, we keep hammering this man, and we need to hammer this man, because at the moment we have a press showing disgusting pictures about the death, well, actually it was the murder of Gaddafi. He may have been a tyrant, he may have been an absolutely despicable man, but Tony Blair and the British government have participated in the hunting down and murder of a foreign head of state. In my opinion, he should have been brought for proper trial and justice. So Tony Blair kisses him 1 minute and then is crowing about his murder the next. This man is despicable. Did they get the wrong man? And these are the words from Tony Blair. Can you read it at the back? It says, the concept of the new class. The Prime Minister has a vision of a new Britain. Central to this vision is the creation of a new class, a new elite placed in positions of authority who will propagate the new spirit of the age and spread the principles of the third way across Britain. That is a statement out of a document for policy studies. It is a real quote. It is in print. It is evidence. It's not fiction that Tony Blair and his cohorts were working to create a new political elite class with the values and morality and qualities that Tony Blair displays. This is a criminal elite. So these people, if you know where to look for it, tell us what they're doing. And here is what I think is one of the best pictures of the state of our politicians. This is Chris Bryant. He's an ex-minister in the church. He worked with the BBC. He's a common purpose leader. And this was him photographing himself on the website for homosexual partners. And this man, I believe, also stood up recently in Parliament to criticise Liam Fox. These people are disgusting. The press doesn't deal with them in the right language, so people don't react in the right way. But when they're described in real language, instead of politically correct language, something happens. People agree with you. Try discussing it in the supermarket or the post office and use the right language. You'll be amazed at what people say to you. They agree with you. And this is the thing to wake them up. Here's another one. We won't waste time on him. This is the new breed, though, Miliband. Very, very dangerous. This is a pure Marxist family. These are groomed in raw Marxism. And they are straight in as leader of the Labour Party. So anybody that is old Labour has been totally betrayed because we've got a criminal elite class coming in. I can't actually say Mr. Miliband is a criminal, but I can say he's elitist. And it's a funny old thing, because if we deal with Labour, we've got to deal with balls. But balls is a Bilderberger. And Bilderbergers were created immediately after the Second World War by ex-Nazis, like Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. And they are corporatists. And we have the proof that Ed Balls attended the meeting because he charged the public for his travel. But they only attend as a private individual, so he's a liar as well. So we have Miliband, the Marxist, and we have Ed Balls, the fascist. But the reality is that it's Gramscian fascism, and that takes you right round to Saul Alinsky. I know this is a bit of a political lesson, but we need to understand it. And here's a little lamb. This is Rory Stewart, and he's an extraordinary man because he's popped up as an MP up in Cumbria, come out of nowhere, apparently done a year in the army, although nobody can find anything out about the commission. He's walked all over Afghanistan, and all of a sudden he's invited to Bilderberger meetings. And he's now being challenged by his local constituents because he said he went to Washington. He said he went to Washington on government business, but when he's been challenged about it recently, he said, no, it was social. So he's now being asked, which was it, business or pleasure? But we think this man has been chosen as something special because he's going to Bilderberg meetings. I like to think of him as a little lamb. You'd like to scoop him up in your arms. Well, you wouldn't, because he's dangerous, in my opinion. These are the sorts of people. Now, I've spent some time in Holland. I love Holland. I've got a lot of friends still in Holland. I like the country. I like the people. But wartime, strange things happen. Just as we had our own traitors, a lot of people in Holland went off and fought with the Waffen-SS. The Dutch people are a little bit shy about speaking about that. But this man, Prince Bernhard, who set up the Bilderberg group, was signed on both as an SS officer and as a Nazi Party member. So, taught Bilderbergers, you can get rid of the idea of a difference between the party. They're all in it. Here's a big traitor, of course, Mr. Brown, sold off the gold reserves, and that's the pitiful state where we are left with 315 tons. It's not even clean gold, which means it's worth less. So that's the relative size of the pot now, thanks to Brown. He did what he was told by the Rothschilds, I would believe. He only works for the international bankers. If we get a bit more local, I've got to watch the time a bit because I've got some video clips I want to show you. But this is one of my local MPs, Alison Seebeck. She has sat and done nothing while Devonport Naval Base has been absolutely slaughtered. And I have a letter from her assuring one of her constituents that there was nothing to worry about to do with Europe. The most important thing that her constituents were worried about were battery hens. This lady's just been made Shadow Defence Minister. It doesn't matter what they do, they carry on. Another little lamb. Mr. Clegg's dangerous because he's number 2. He sits in the background and you can't see what he's doing. And here he is. The man's a warmonger. Yep. All around the world, British forces are being involved in unlawful wars. When I say that, I've got to qualify it, because I've discovered when you say that, you can get some hostility by the families of people out there, of the troops out fighting. And I'm not being disloyal to the troops, because I believe that if you sign up for the Queen's shilling, you are putting your name forward to fight for your country and family and society. That's what you do. But it's very important that when you go and fight and die or lose limbs, you are fighting in a cause which is just and right. Now, some good news, and I've got to be very careful how I say it, but if I said to you that the troops in Afghanistan are talking about what we are talking about, I think we could afford to smile. I can tell you for a fact that troops out in Afghanistan are talking about the fact that they are there to protect the opium crops, and they're also talking about lawful rebellion. They are talking about the British Constitution Group. And credit where it's due, because John Harris also got a mention, which brought a smile to my face. So what we are doing is working. And one of the themes that we're going to come on to this afternoon is how we fight better. We know we're fighting now. Here's Cameron. And Cameron's a funny old man because he says this. Has it come up? Oh, it has. Right? Now, this is nothing to do with Israel or Jewish community. This is to do with Cameron. If you're the Prime Minister of this country, in my opinion, your priority is this country and the people of this country. But Cameron is running a parallel track because he said that his belief in Israel is indestructible. So I would just like to know, Mr. Cameron, which of the two masters are you following? It's a very easy question. It's nothing really to do with Israel, it's to do with David Cameron. And if we follow it through, we come on to this guy, Liam Fox. Now, I don't really mind what he does with his best man. That is not the issue. The issue with him is what he's actually been involved in. And a lot of information came out in the national press, but you had to really read across a lot of newspapers to find out what they were saying. Now, when Fox stood up in Parliament on Thursday, I think it was, did anybody see it live on TV? It was incredible. It was like the man was receiving an Oscar. And I'd like to thank David Cameron for his support. And I'd like to thank all my family for their support. And I'd like to thank members of the Tory party for their support. He did not actually admit that he had done something serious. And that's because these people don't consider themselves to be part of normal law. They're above it. But go and have a look at that video and see this man in action. It was incredible. So here they are, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. I'm not sure whether that's equivalent to a coconut, but it's fairly similar. And everybody has been focused on the fact that they're very close to each other and they have a loving, clothy relationship. But if we delve into Mr. Fox and his relationship with Werrity, we start to find some very interesting links. Now, I'm going to try and show you this in another program, so I hope you're going to bear with me because I can't show it in sufficient detail with PowerPoint. So give me 30 seconds and I'm just going to try and get another program up. Okay, it's still going to be a little bit difficult. I'm going to have to talk you through it, but what I'm going to say is the information we've got here, we are going to disseminate. Well, it is being disseminated as I speak, because there is so much detail. So what I might have to be doing is saying to you, look, I'm pointing it out, but of course the sun's now come out as well, which hasn't helped matters. But we have got the detail and we are talking fact. So I'll try and take you through this little diagram. Right, obviously the first thing is we've got Liam Fox here in the middle, and this is his best man, Adam Werrity. And it was Werrity that was running a very strange charity, which I'll come down here, called Pargav. Can you see the arrow for that? And now basically Pargav was being supported by a gentleman called Zabudowski. I hope I pronounced that right. You'll see why, because it's quite a complicated name. And this man is described in the paper as an arms dealer. Was an arms dealer, but in fact he still is an arms dealer, and he did own a very big Israeli arms company, which is now smaller, but he's still worth about 1.5 to 1.8 billion pounds. And we got very interesting to discover that he gave £15,000 to David Cameron's leadership campaign. So David Cameron, our Prime Minister, was helped into power by money which came from an international arms dealer. Now, it gets better because this kind man also donated a total of 135,000 or 131,000 to the Tory party themselves. So we've got a Tory party at the moment operating, and we can prove it on the back of money which has come from international arms dealers. And we're very interested in this man because his nationality is Finnish Israeli. His wife is English, so presumably she donated the money, because you can't donate money from as a foreigner to British parties. But I think we need to ask some serious questions about who backed David Cameron and why he's in power. Is there a connection between the fact that he's pledged his undying loyalty to Israel and we've got somebody connected with Israeli company funding him? I think I'm getting into some fairly heavy territory here, so I hope you will put this out on the internet as fast as possible. Now it gets better, because this is the gentleman's wife, Anita, and we just went to have a look at Anita, and we discovered she's very keen on art. And she was the lady that helped set up the artwork, which included the sculpture of Christ with an erection. Now, David Cameron goes to church. He calls himself Christian. But I think there's something very much nastier going on with Mr. Cameron. So if any of you consider yourselves Tories, or you've got friends who are in the local Tory party, please will you start to ask the questions. We need to get in these people's faces. It gets more complicated, which I can't show you really, but there are arms deals going on with Sri Lanka when weapons were provided to be used against the Tamil Tigers. And this was all connected with Liam Fox and Werrity. Gus O'Donnell down here was the man that Cameron put in charge of the initial inquiry. But of course, Gus O'Donnell is the man who's been running Parliament, because he said when David Cameron could take his post as Prime Minister after the election. Gus O'Donnell also works very closely with Jeff Mulgan, and surprisingly, Jeff Mulgan is the man who works very closely with Demos. He used to run it, and Demos is Marxist. So we have a wonderful mix of international arms dealers, huge sums of money paid to get Cameron elected, This is a criminal elite. We've got to call them criminals, we've got to talk about them as criminals, we've got to expose them as criminals. This is terrible because my eyes are getting worse daily. I'll try and blow this up a bit for you. There's a gentleman on the internet called Craig Murray. He used to work in Uzbekistan. He has commented quite vociferously on this matter, and it was also reported in mainstream press if you saw it, and that was, it was asked, was Werity a useful idiot of Mossad? Mossad being the Israeli security services. So this is not Brian Gerrish making this up, it's already appeared in the national press, but I'm saying we need to dig deeper to find what these people are really involved in. And this is a picture of Liam Fox at an Atlantic Bridge dinner in Washington, where he was conducting, well, we don't know what the business was. And yet Mr. Fox stands up in Parliament and says he's done nothing wrong. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And then if we dig a little bit deeper and we go in another direction, we find some interesting things. Sorry, I just need to bring you back here 2 seconds because I missed it. There's another organisation that this arms dealer is involved in, which is called BICOM, the British Israel Communications and Research Centre. Have you all heard of it? You should have done, because it's intimately involved with the British government. And if we go and have a look at them, we find some interesting things, because here's Liam Fox at one of their big fundraising dinners. And he's standing alongside Anita, who's the wife of the arms dealer. And then if we have a look at some more of their pictures, we find interesting people like Michael Gove, who's now in charge of education, I believe. Something very nasty is going on here. And it mixes all ways, because here's a little darling of the Labour Party called Hazel Blears. What was she doing? I'm, of course, not saying that they did anything wrong by attending this event. I simply want to know what the connections are. So the papers are only just reporting the tip of the iceberg. They want to keep you focused on any physical relationship that may have allegedly taken place between Mr. Liam Fox and Mr. Werity. They don't want you to dig into the arms dealing. Okay, I just need to swap back here to the other program. Hopefully that's going to work. It may not. As I say, what we've got here is very detailed. The documents to back it up are available. It's already been disseminated to a large number of people in the country. That's a basic precaution which is necessary these days. But this will be made available so that you can actually read it and see it for yourself. But this is the interesting couple. And all I am asking is, what exactly is the relationship between them and David Cameron and Liam Fox? And if you think I've got it wrong in that direction, let's talk about Oxford University Business School, which took 20 million from another arms dealer. This one's Syrian. And did you read in the paper recently that Oxford University has now taken another £75 million from a Russian oligarch in order to set up a world leadership school for world government leaders in Oxford? And this is the same university that's taking money from international arms dealers. Now, I've decided to put a picture of my local MP. This is Mr. Gary Streeter. He doesn't like me very much. I don't know why. I think I'm quite reasonable. This is the BBC talking about him, not me. There's two things. If the little blue box at the bottom, which you probably can't read, but it says, the chairman said it was a technical infringement of Law Society rules, and I accept the consequences. I don't know what it was exactly, but Mr. Streeter did something wrong with the Law Society when he was a lawyer, and they found against him. But it's the bit on the right that interests me, because Mr. Streeter is a fantastic Christian for the Tory party. And so I'm asking him a question today on camera. And the question is, Mr. Streeter, do you know that your leader, Mr. Cameron, is connected with people who've been funding the party who believe they should display statues of Christ with an erection? And if you didn't know but you now know, when will you resign from the Tory party? We are having our minds interfered with and played with on a daily basis. If you wake up to any of the BBC radio channels, who listens to Chris Evans in the morning? This is really embarrassing because I do, because my wife's got it on the on the alarm. You listen to what he talks about, a lot of drivel, but in is coming population control. They are dribbling in the hot topics to control our minds. Oliver Letwin, he's been in the press. I wonder which country his allegiance is to. And what he was doing is throwing away documents concerning security. And what has happened to him? Is he in prison? No. It's laughed, it's a joke. Oh, everybody throws away a few papers at lunchtime. But this is the same man. I don't think this pointer can cope with the light, but on the left-hand side, he's heavily involved with the Cabinet Office Nudge Unit. How many of you know what the Nudge Unit is? Right, this is good. The Nudge Unit is a unit inside the Cabinet Office to use applied behavioural psychology. This has been in the press. But basically, these people are telling us that they are now going to use neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, it's real applied psychology, to change our views and values. And they admit in their own documentation, which we have shown and printed in the UK column, the document we quoted from was called Mindspace, and in it, it says, when the government uses this form of applied behavioural psychology, we may realise our behaviour has changed, but we won't understand how it's changed, or we may not even understand our behaviour has been changed at all. So this is so dangerous, and it's being pushed through all the public bodies. The other thing we should remember with Oliver Letwin, of course, is he was a director with one of N.M. Rothschild's companies. So here is yet another government minister who thinks he's above the law, connected with international banks and programs to play with our minds. I won't go through this, but we printed this in the column, and we've got the newspaper with this diagram available here. We showed the links between people in government and those that they're using to use applied behavioural psychology on every government department first, and then to use it on us. And their prime target, of course, is the children. Now, there are still people who are cheeky enough to say that I deal in theory. They're reducing, but I still get attacked sometimes. This is a little something that was given to us this week, and I'm going to play it for you, hopefully. It's an audio clip of the BBC interviewing the team inside the Cabinet Office Nudge Unit. Please listen very carefully to what they say and how they conduct themselves.
We're just on our way out to the Behavioural Insight team. And we're in the Cabinet Office, aren't we, here around the back? Yeah. A press officer is escorting me. They're a bit nervous. They haven't had a reporter listening in before. So we're going up some back stairs here. The unit was set up over a year ago, and David Cameron, the Prime Minister, is very much on board with the idea. This is the only one of its kind in the world, and there are only 6 members of the team.
Owen. Sam. Simon.
Laura.
David. and Rory.
Brilliant. That's the team then. That's the core team.
We thought we'd have a kind of a bit of a kind of team meeting which you can listen in on.
That'd be great, like a brainstorming session.
Yeah, it'll be largely around the kind of stuff.
They kick off with their agenda. They're turning their attention to economic growth and the red tape challenge.
Well, you know that obviously we've agreed we're going to put more time on growth, which I think is the right thing to do. Everybody's worried about it.
I'm not encouraged to ask questions, but I sneak one in to the director, Dr. David Halpin, an academic who also was an advisor to Tony Blair. Is there one aim you have as a unit? Your motto?
I don't have a motto, but I'd say for me a central bit is designing mechanisms that put consumers back in control of their investment decisions and their consumer choices and so on. So to me that is a big part of what we do, I would say. Often quite small adjustments are very significant.
Come in.
Thank you. One of the people they report to is the outgoing Cabinet Secretary, Sir Gus O'Donnell. What a magnificent room. Wow.
It's a Humphrey room.
It is a bit of a Humphrey room, isn't it? Can you give me one sentence summing it up so that when people are listening, they get a sense of precisely what it is, in a language that people understand?
Exactly. This is one of the most exciting parts of my job. Believe me, I was absolutely determined that we would start to think about how people actually made decisions, from a public policy point of view, how could we help people make the right decisions. So the nudge unit, that's what it's all about. And it's not necessarily about nudging, it's actually quite a lot of the time people totally want to make the right choices but they don't have the right information. You know, they'd love to reduce the salt in their diet, but how do they know how much salt's in something? So if you tell them, they'd love to pick the right school that's great at drama or music, but they don't know. So providing information is just the basic start of this. So it's not always necessarily about nudges, it's about helping people nudge themselves.
Is it a separate unit for something which seems fairly blatantly obvious?
Oh, this is applied common sense. This is not rocket science, right? That's the interesting thing. But some of it does require you to understand and think about things in a slightly different way. All the brilliant ideas afterwards seem obvious.
International developments in this field.
Back in the brainstorming session, I ask one of the team how they respond to accusations that they're being wishy-washy, airy-fairy, opaque, kind of obvious.
We don't just face sort of scepticism outside of Whitehall. I think it'd be fair to say that there are still a lot of people within government that are sort of yet to be won over. But one of the sort of most sort of exciting bits of the job for me is when we have sort of behavioural sessions every week where we sort of usually get a department or an outside agency to come in and we kick around a few ideas, and those sort of discussions are actually really influential, I think, in sort of spreading the message throughout Whitehall and winning people over to the approach, because you can see their sort of creative juices get flowing.
Hi. Brilliant, yes. The Minister for Government is Oliver Letwin, who has a reputation as a deep thinker. I can see his creative juices flowing when I ask him about nudges. So I'm going to ask you your favourite nudge.
Well, my favourite nudge is something which, one of the most obvious kinds of nudge, because it comes out of the history of nudges. When you changed letters from the tax people to people in their local area, to say not where would I do if you don't pay taxes, but rather most people in this local area are paying their taxes, this increased repayment rates by about 15%. And it's a pretty amazing fact, I think.
Earlier this year, he told a committee that the unit is experimental, and I asked him if he still holds that opinion.
This is experimental. And I'm always astonished by the number of people who talk as if, unlike everywhere else in society, governments shouldn't ever experiment. Well, if governments never experiment, governments will never do anything any better. They will always do things the way they've always done them. And if they always do things the way they've always done them, all the same old mistakes will be made. Actually, I think what government needs is more imagination, because we're in considerable need of both.
It's just intriguing, and when you start reading the evidence and you start doing these wacky experiments, you can...
I'll just cut into it there because I'm watching the time a bit. The first thing was that when that interview started and the people introduced themselves, did you notice they only gave their first names? And that is because all the work that we've done to find out who these people are, they don't want to tell us. So you have a unit that, until the UK column actually exposed it in its true sense, the government wasn't talking about it. and even people very close to the upper levels of government had no idea of its existence. And when you try and speak to them about what they're doing, you only get first names. The second thing is he kept using the word nudge. And the reason he uses that is because that sounds okay. If he'd have said, well, actually, we're using applied psychology on people, people would start to say, whoa, wait a minute, not without my permission. So he uses nudge because he's being deceitful. And he also lied because it isn't an experiment. This is fully set up. There are now behavioural cells, change cells, in every major government department. And their objective is to use applied psychology without our consent to change our views and values. See if I can just get back into the presentation here. Stay with me because I know I'm covering a lot. Right, Future Gov. How many of you heard of this? Right, nobody. Well, you need to, and you need to know about this man, Dominic Campbell, because he's the man that set up this little company. And this is what he calls himself on one of the, Twitter? He says, I'm a boy wolf king. Does that sound like the man you'd like to meet? I am a boy wolf king. Now, there's a few people smiling, and it is funny in a way, but it soon gets pretty serious because I'm going to show you this man doing some stuff. If we're going to have a look at his CV, he's fascinating because he's jet-setting between London and Washington. Yeah, and he's involved in helping local governments to change. And this is one of his fellow directors, a lady called Carrie Bishop. And news from a nerd, she says that, not me. So his fellow director calls herself a nerd, and if you go and have a look at her little Twitter site, I think you'll be quite interested in what she is and what she isn't. But why are we interested in these people? Well, I've got a film which I hope is going to play, and I want you to listen very, very carefully to what's being said. We've cut the film down. We have not added any audio to it. All we've done is cut out audio so that it's emphasised particular parts.
I'm going to do that very uncool TED thing of saying this is really exciting for me to do this. You don't often hear that at the beginning of TED videos, but I think you should a bit more. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the work that we do. My name's Dominic Campbell. I run a small firm called Future Gov, and I'm lucky enough to work with a small gang of cool people who are really interested in how we can use technology and the web to transform government and politics. This is my personal story. This is where I started 9 years ago. Very, very classic local government story. That's Barnet Town Hall in North London. Doesn't look like the hotbed of innovation and disruption. So this is also me. The other side of my life is my web obsession, and in particular Twitter. And the last two slides are really the foundation of my career and the foundation of FutureGov, and also me being lucky enough to be part of this movement that's now often called Gov 2.0, Government 2.0, building on how do you transform the web, government using Web 2.0 technologies. So Twitter has been pretty fundamental to why I'm here tonight in so many ways, which I can't really go into because there's so many of them. But it's fascinating just from a personal journey how disruptive to my life this disruptive technology has been to actually take me out of being in the back office of a town hall in North London to suddenly being here 3 years later is phenomenal. What is the kind of culture that we're all striving for? What is the new world that we're pushing for? So I think that we're at a point now where you're either with us or you're against us. Or are we actually going to transform government into something entirely different? I think the really crucial thing is that we're pushing from two sides. So on the one hand, we need to be disrupting from the inside of government. Disrupting from the inside of government. Disrupting from the inside of government. They're the ones who are creating parallel structures. Carrie Bishop, who I'm honoured to work with, who's a great colleague, she talks about parallel structures where you're not destroying the system with this technology, you're just creating an entirely new system. Just just using the web to create new structures for yourself. So normally where there's bright colours and shiny logos like these, you've normally stumbled into a place where social innovators are trying to do something new and creative and interesting. And all I will say to finish is just to encourage you to join us now as a militant optimist, get on the web, get creative and get going. So thank you very much.
Did you pick it all up? Now, we cut chunks out to emphasise what he says very clearly, and he is a trainer of people involved in local government. We need to get more disruptors into local government in order to get the change we want. Do you think you're seeing disruption in hospitals, in transport, in education? Is it getting turbulent and chaotic? We need to get more disruptors. Do you know who this phrase really comes from? It comes from Gramsci and Saul Alinsky. If you're going to make the major change to normalise people, and that makes us one world government, we have to get into the institutions and break them down. And this man, who did 8 years with a local authority in London, is now being paid to jet set to Washington and back, and he is training local government people. He used the word transforming, he's talking about disrupting, and he says something particularly dangerous. You're either for us or against us. You and I, as taxpayers, are paying that man's salary effectively. He's a consultant, but he's taking on public sector training. The techniques he's using, I am sure, are NLP, applied behavioral psychology. And he is not enhancing by getting truth and honesty and efficiency and loyalty into organisations. He is working to disrupt them. He is what Tony Blair knows as a change agent. And we've got to root these people out. So I've got another video, hopefully. It's a bit scary, actually, at the moment, because these are working. Oh,
and then, of course, my mother didn't really understand me. There is a school of thought that thinks anyone who thinks psychology can tell you anything about anything needs their head examining. But frankly, these days they're in a minority. Indeed, behavioural insights are now the very stuff of government, with, since July last year, its own behavioural insights team. So what are they after? Well, they want to nudge us. You know, nudge, minus the wink, wink, say no more. The idea is that you change our behaviour not with rewards and incentives, the effective but expensive carrot, nor with fines and punishment, the unpopular and resented stick, but by making us think it was our idea to change in the first place. Persuade us that certain behaviours are simply not acceptable, and that you'd feel somehow wrong doing them, or better if you changed. Nudges that have worked, and you may have seen, are littering, signs saying other people don't drop their litter here. Tax demands, including explanations that most people had already paid, would you believe, boosted repayment rates by 15%. And it doesn't stop there. Encouraging patients to read back the details of their appointments apparently boosted attendance by 30%. Nudging us has entered the sphere of organ donation, food choices, shopping and the environment. So heads up, it seems here to stay. Although it does have its critics, and there are those who think it's frankly pie-in-the-sky, airy-fairy mumbo-jumbo. And there is one question. If this is the cheaper, cleverer answer to changing the way we are without being branded the nanny state, bear in mind that analogy. The method may have changed, but nanny's still in charge. My next appointment is 3 p.m. next Thursday.
Do you notice that in that clip, which is a BBC clip, there is no factual account of what's really going on? They dismiss anybody who criticise. It's airy-fairy, wishy-washy. So anybody who's got a criticism, it's airy-fairy, wishy-washy. That's NLP going on. Instead of saying, let's interview somebody who's deeply concerned about what you're doing, the BBC makes it a joke. And the BBC, in my opinion, is starting to do this because they know that we're starting to come and look in the right areas.
We're here about information and how we get it. So you have trust on one side and you have distrust on the other side.
2 school sessions in which demos explore pupils' online abilities in Liverpool.
I would search it on Google and believe the first answer that came up, to be honest. I know I shouldn't do it, but Google's like a trusted website.
And in East London, where conspiracy theories are quickly raised.
There was a documentary about this guy. He does his own research, finding out that in one of the FBI, the building that got hit by a plane. Apparently it was not a plane, it was a missile from the army.
Some pupils are internet savvy, others fall foul to the problems the think tank says are common. Demos brought together existing research and surveyed 500 teachers across England and Wales.
Teachers are increasingly finding that their pupils are bringing into the classroom conspiracy theories, misinformation, propaganda that they found on the internet. And what I think that means is that young people aren't really being taught enough about how to critically assess and evaluate the information that they're finding online.
Demos want digital judgment to be a core part of the curriculum. They say teachers need the training and resources to do that, and they want parents to encourage their children to think more critically about the information they're seeing on the internet.
I think we sometimes harbour too much on the negative aspects of the information that's available to them, and less of the fact that it's been actually quite a liberating experience for lots of children to be able to have that access to information.
And they come away believing they've been attacked by a vampire.
At the end of the session, pupils are shown a faked news report about Fox attacks. Even the more internet aware fall for it before being told it's a conspiracy theory. There's little debate over how influential the internet is on young people today. How negative that can be raises further questions. Catherine Nye, BBC News.
Now, I've got to test you out on this because I'm embarrassing myself because I've forgotten. What does the lady say right at the beginning when she talks to the class? I hope somebody's going to tell me, because otherwise I'm going to have to replay it. Yeah? Yeah, she says it's about trust and distrust. This is a classic manipulation of the minds of the children. It's not about that at all. It's about truth and non-truth. So she shifts the frame. Now, who was running these sessions? What company? Demos. Demos is Marxist. It's the Marxist think tank that is at the back of all 3 parties in power. Now, that video should have made you feel very, very warm and cuddly inside. Well, it's got a dark outer crust because, of course, they're brainwashing the children. But the inside is wonderful, because why are they brainwashing the children? Because the truth is beginning to get out across the internet at such speed that children are picking up on what is being talked about on the internet. So Demos says, oh my goodness, children are learning about lies and conspiracy theories. We've got to get into the classroom and explain to them what the truth is. Well, what I hope we are going to be able to do, and if anybody wants to assist, I think we need to get a video together exposing what Demos really is, and we need to get it into the classrooms as fast as possible. What I have shown you is not theory, it is evidence that the government is now running a psychological program against us. Now, Roger is twitching and he's moving up on me. Actually, I forgot to say that he's had a particularly fine haircut, actually, before coming today. And since I'm the ex-military person, it's put me to shame. What do we intend to do about it? Basically, this. More of the same. But this afternoon, we're going to talk to you in detail about what is going right and what we need to do more of, and why we are sure that we're winning. Thank you very much.